Elias Turner was known by many names across the far stretch of the Arizona Territory. Some called him the Quiet Cowboy. Some said he was just a rancher who preferred the sound of wind over the sound of people. Others believed he carried stories in his eyes that he never spoke out loud. Elias himself did not think of any of that. He simply lived his life the way he felt was right. He rose with the sun, tended to his horses, watered his small garden, and kept peace with everyone he met. His ranch was not large, and he liked it that way. A wooden house built by his own hands, a barn that creaked when the morning breeze came through, and wide open land that glowed gold when the sun set. It was a quiet life, steady and calm. He rode into town only when needed, and when people saw him, they greeted him kindly. He rarely spoke long, but when he did, his words were careful and respectful. He had no wish to argue, command, or control anyone. Sometimes travelers stopped at his land. Elias always offered water and a safe place to rest. People knew that about him. He did not judge or question others. He believed every person walked a long road with their own burdens. So he gave what kindness he could. One warm afternoon, while checking his horses near the fence line, Elias heard the distant rattling of wagon wheels. Dust rose behind them as a group of travelers approached. A merchant rode at the front, calling out greetings in a loud voice that carried far. Elias walked forward and opened his gate. He expected the usual exchange of goods and news. But this time was different. As the wagons came closer, Elias saw several people seated in the back of one of them. They were quiet. Their hands were tied together with rope, though not tightly. Their clothing was worn from long travel. Their eyes were low and their shoulders were heavy. These were not travelers. These were captives, people who were being traded, not helped. Elias felt a heaviness settle in his chest. He did not speak right away. The merchant greeted him with cheer as though everything was ordinary. "Fine day, Elias. I have goods, fine horses, and workers who can serve. Perhaps something for you?" Elias did not like the way the merchant spoke. He kept his voice calm. "I need only supplies. Nothing more." The merchant smiled, not understanding or perhaps pretending not to understand. He motioned toward the people seated in the wagon. "These people can work your land, cook, clean. You keep a quiet place. Might be useful to have another pair of hands." Elias did not answer. His attention had shifted to one person among the group. A woman standing instead of sitting. Rope around her wrists, but her back straight, her chin lifted. Her eyes clear, not empty. She did not look afraid. She did not look defeated. She looked strong, like someone who still held her spirit with both hands. Her hair was dark and long. Her posture carried grace. Though she had journeyed far, her presence felt whole. Elias noticed the way the other captives seemed to look toward her, as though she gave them quiet strength simply by existing. The merchant followed Elias's gaze and laughed lightly. "Oh, that one. She gives us no trouble, but she does not speak with us. She watches us like we are children. She has pride, that one. Hard to place in any work. If you want her, I will lower the price. She is too proud to be useful." Elias felt something inside him tighten. Not anger, not offense. A simple, steady understanding. The merchant had no idea who she was or what dignity meant. Pride was not a weakness. Pride was a memory of one's worth. Elias stepped closer to the wagon. The woman looked at him. Not up at him, but directly into his eyes. Her look was clear and unwavering. There was no fear, no pleading, only truth. In that quiet moment, Elias understood that this woman was not someone to be owned. She was someone who had been taken from her home during some conflict he did not need to know the details of. Her story was her own, and her pain was not something to be spoken of lightly. He spoke softly, not to the merchant, but to her. "You are safe here." She did not answer, but something in her eyes moved very slightly, like the first ripple in still water. The merchant shrugged, confused but ready to sell. Elias did not haggle. He did not speak long. He simply reached into his pouch and counted what he had. Enough to honor her humanity, not to treat her as property. He handed the amount to the merchant with calm, steady hands. "I will take her," Elias said. Then more firmly, "Not as a servant. She is free." The merchant blinked, puzzled, but the exchange was done. The ropes were removed. The woman did not step away from the wagon right away. She stood still, taking in the open land. Then she slowly walked toward Elias. Elias turned and began toward his cabin. He did not touch her or guide her. She followed at her own pace, keeping a respectful distance, observing everything. Inside the cabin, he poured her a cup of water and placed it gently on the table, She watched his movements, wary but attentive. Elias stepped back, giving her space. She took the cup and drank. Not quickly, not desperately, just calmly, like someone who chose her own actions. For a long time they were both silent. Elias finally spoke, carefully. "My name is Elias Turner. You are free here. You may stay for some time if you wish. If someday you want to return to your people, I will help you do that." She looked at him again, studying him the same way she might study the horizon for rain. After a moment, she touched her hand lightly to her chest. "Nayeli," she said softly. Her voice was gentle but strong. Her name felt like a river flowing through quiet land. Elias nodded, speaking her name with care. "Nayeli." She sat quietly for a moment, sensing his honesty. But trust is not something that grows in an hour. It grows like a seed in the earth, slowly. So Nayeli remained alert, watchful. Elias respected that. He did not ask questions. He did not expect anything from her. He simply went back to his tasks, letting her decide how close or far she wished to be. She observed his work for a long while. She saw how he treated his horses with kindness, never force. She saw how he repaired fences with patience, not frustration. She saw how he paused to watch the sky, as though the world was something to be respected, not controlled. She did not speak. But something inside her eased just a little. That first day was quiet, but the quiet was not heavy. It was the kind of quiet that has room for something new to begin, something not of ownership, not of fear, something of respect. And respect is the soil where trust may one day grow. The next morning, sunlight entered through the small cabin window, warming the wooden floor. Elias was already awake, feeding the horses outside. He worked quietly, the same way he always did. The sound of gentle hoofsteps and the slow rustle of hay filled the early air. It was peaceful. Nayeli stepped out of the cabin with careful steps. She kept a comfortable distance, not too close, not too far. She watched Elias without speaking. She had spent the night alert, listening to the wind, the shifting wood of the house, and the quiet breathing of the night around her. She did not sleep deeply. That was normal for someone who had traveled through uncertain lands. Trust was not immediate. Trust needed time. Elias did not look at her suddenly or with pressure. He simply continued his work, letting her take in her surroundings at her own pace. When he finished feeding the horses, he brought a bucket of fresh water near the fence and placed a cup beside it. Then he stepped away, letting her choose to drink or not. She did, slowly, lifting the water to her lips with steady hands. She did not look at him while she drank. Elias did not mind. They existed beside one another in quiet understanding. After a while, Elias began repairing a broken fence board. Nayeli watched his movements. His hands were steady. He did not rush. Each action was thoughtful. She could see that everything he touched he treated with care. It reminded her of her people, who believed every object had a spirit and deserved respect. Seeing a man from another world treat his land gently softened something hidden in her heart. Elias paused and glanced toward her, speaking gently. "You do not have to help," he said, "but if you wish to, there is work here that is light and simple." He did not say it as a command. It was an invitation open like the wide sky. Nayeli considered his words. In her heart, she was used to being part of her community. Work was not something forced. Work was something shared. To do nothing felt strange, like standing alone without a shadow. So slowly she stepped closer, keeping her eyes lowered just enough to show she came with respect, not challenge. She pointed to the fallen wood and then to the fence, asking silently if she could assist. Elias nodded. He handed her a piece of wood and stepped aside so she could choose her own pace. They worked side by side. No words passed between them, but sometimes silence speaks more than conversation. Their movements began to match like two parts of one rhythm. The desert breeze brushed past them, warm and calm. Birds called from the tall trees nearby. Life moved gently. When the task was finished, Nayeli stood and brushed the wood dust from her hands. Elias looked at the fence, then at her. "Thank you," he said simply. She dipped her head slightly, accepting the gratitude without needing to speak. As the day continued, they shared more of the same quiet company. Elias cooked a simple meal of beans and flatbread. He placed a plate across the table and then stepped away, letting her choose her seat. Nayeli watched him carefully, noting his respect again. Many people showed politeness only with words, not actions. Elias's kindness was in his behavior, not in long speeches. She valued that. While they ate, Nayeli lifted her eyes once to study him. Elias did not look back at her right away. He let her observe him without reacting. It made her feel safe, allowed to look without being questioned. She placed her hand lightly on her chest again. Nayeli, she repeated, reminding him that names hold identity. Elias nodded. Yes, Nayeli. It is a good name. She hesitated, then pointed at him gently. Elias, she said. He smiled just a little, the first smile she had seen from him. It was small but sincere. Slowly, day after day, something quiet began to form between them. It was not friendship yet. It was not closeness. It was simply understanding. Elias worked outdoors and Nayeli observed the land. She noticed what plants grew along the streams. She recognized herbs that healed. She found roots useful for cooking and shared them by placing them near the cutting board without speaking a word. Elias cooked them, offering some to her, and she nodded gently in appreciation. Every evening, Elias would sit outside as the sun lowered, watching the sky shift into soft colors of amber, rose, and violet. The desert glowed with a warm light that felt like a blessing. On the third evening, Nayeli quietly walked out and sat nearby. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that they shared the same horizon. Neither spoke. They did not need to. Humans sometimes speak with silence better than words. Nayeli watched the horses grazing and the birds flying home. Elias watched the slow sinking sun. Their breathing became slow and steady, in the same rhythm as the earth settling into night. After a long while, Elias spoke softly. "Do you have family?" he asked gently, as if the question had been placed on the wind, not pushed into her hands. Nayeli did not speak right away. She looked into the distance as though seeing mountains far beyond the desert. Her eyes softened, full of memory. "Yes," she said quietly. "My people live far, many days from here." Her voice carried emotion, but not heaviness. It carried love. Elias nodded again. He did not ask for details. He did not push. He respected what she chose to share. "If someday," he said slowly, "you want to return to them, I will help you find the way." Nayeli turned her head, looking at him fully for the first time. The wind lifted a strand of hair across her face. Her eyes searched his, not for the meaning of his words, but for the sincerity behind them. She saw honesty, real and steady, like the earth beneath her feet. She did not smile, but her expression softened. She placed her hand gently to her chest again, a gesture of truth. "Thank you," she whispered. The next days passed with slow, natural ease. They worked near one another. They shared simple meals. Sometimes Elias taught her the English words for objects around the ranch. Sometimes Nayeli taught him the names of the wind, the different types of rain, and the way to read the land by how the birds flew. Their worlds were different, but something in the middle was beginning to form. Not closeness, not friendship yet, something gentler, something like two rivers flowing beside one another, not touching but listening to each other's sound. Nayeli still kept distance. At night she slept lightly. She watched Elias with quiet caution. Trust does not come quickly to a heart that has once been taken from home, but she saw no harm in him. Only patience, and patience has its own language. One evening, when the sky was turning deep blue and stars began to appear, Nayeli spoke first. "You are alone here?" she asked, her English still slow but sure. Elias nodded, resting his arms on his knees as he sat on the porch steps. "Yes, it is quiet. I like quiet. I like peace." Nayeli thought for a moment, then spoke softly. "Quiet can be good. Quiet can also be heavy." Elias looked at her, hearing the wisdom in her words. He nodded once more. "That is true," he said. They sat together in the gentle dark, the sky swaying with stars. The silence was not heavy now. It felt shared, soft, warm, peaceful. Something new was growing between them. Something that needed no hurry. Something that had its own slow rhythm. Like seeds that wait for rain before they open. Respect had been planted, and respect can grow into trust. Trust can grow into something even deeper, but that was a path for later. For now, the night was quiet, the air was warm, and two souls who came from different worlds shared the same sky. And that was enough. The days passed quietly, each one a little different from the last, yet all carrying the same calm rhythm. Elias continued tending to his ranch, and Naeli moved through the days with growing comfort. She had begun to understand the land around her, the way the wind carried dust in slow spirals, the way the horizon shimmered under the bright sun, the way the evenings cooled the earth and soothed the day's warmth. Elias noticed that Naeli had a deep awareness of nature. She could sense when weather was changing without looking at the sky. She could find fresh herbs near the water without searching for long. And when she walked, she moved softly, as though stepping in rhythm with the land instead of pressing against it. Watching her reminded Elias of how much the ground itself held stories and how much the world could teach a person if they truly listened. One morning, while Elias was checking his horses near the stable, Naeli approached him with slow, purposeful steps. She held a piece of soft leather in her hands. On the leather was a shape drawn with gentle curves and simple lines. It was a symbol, a path leading through mountains. Elias looked at it carefully. Naeli took a quiet breath and spoke with steady courage. "My home," she said, touching the drawn path. "It is far, many days walking, many days riding." Elias listened. He did not interrupt. Naeli continued, her words soft but firm. "I wish to go, not today, not tomorrow, but soon." Her eyes lifted to his. "Will you help me?" There was no demand in her question, only hope, only honesty. Elias set aside the horse brush he had been using. He took his time before speaking, not because he doubted her request, but because he wanted his words to be true and thoughtful. "Yes," he said quietly. "When you are ready, we will go." Naeli closed her eyes for a moment. It was not relief she felt. It was something deeper, a thread of trust connecting her heart to a promise. She opened her eyes again and nodded once, not too quickly, not too slowly, a nod with meaning. Over the next days, they began preparing without speaking much about it. The preparations were not rushed. They were gentle, steady, like building a path stone by stone. Elias checked the horses and selected the strongest one for the journey. Naeli gathered plants and herbs she knew could heal or calm the body. She dried them carefully and tied them in small bundles. Elias packed dried corn, beans, and bread. Naeli added the roots she had collected. Their tasks matched naturally, as if they had always worked this way. During these preparations, something began to shift between them. It was subtle, like morning light slowly brightening the horizon. They were not just two people sharing space now. They were two people sharing purpose. Naeli began speaking more. Not long conversations, but small sentences that carried meaning. "The wind today is soft. Good day for travel," she would say. Or, "This plant is good for tired legs, I will keep it." Elias listened with interest, learning from her without pride. He appreciated her knowledge and did not pretend to know more than he did. This respect made their connection steady, like a rope tied securely between two trees. Sometimes in the evenings they sat outside and shared stories with the sky above them. Elias spoke of his childhood. He had grown up in a quiet home with parents who believed in gentle work and simple living. He had learned early how to care for horses and how to read the weather by watching the clouds. He had once traveled town to town, but he had grown tired of loud voices and restless roads, choosing instead to live in peace on his ranch. Naeli listened and nodded, hearing not just his words but his silence, the things he felt but did not say. Then Naeli shared pieces of her own life. She spoke of tall mountains and cool rivers, of children laughing at the edges of the village, of songs sung at dawn when the sun first touched the earth, of stories told around the fire, where every person was both student and teacher. When she spoke of her family, her voice softened with love, not sadness. "My father," she said once, looking toward the distant horizon, "has strong eyes, but he laughs with his whole face. My mother teaches songs to the children. Her voice is gentle." Elias looked at her quietly, picturing the life she came from. A life full of community, shared responsibilities, and deep connection to nature. He understood why her spirit was strong. She came from a world that taught strength with kindness, not force. The more they spoke, the deeper their understanding grew. They were different, yes, their cultures, languages, stories, everything about their lives had been shaped by different worlds, but their hearts sought the same things: peace, respect, belonging. Soon the day came when the supplies were ready and the horse was saddled. The morning was clear, the air fresh with the promise of travel. Nayeli stood beside the horse, her posture straight, her eyes steady. Elias checked the pack one last time, making sure everything was secured. There was no rush, no hurried goodbyes. The land around them was quiet, as though holding a gentle breath. Elias helped Nayeli onto the horse. She did not need much assistance, but she accepted the gesture as a sign of connection, not weakness. Then Elias climbed up behind her, steady and calm. They began to ride. The journey was slow and peaceful. The sky stretched wide above them. The land rolled gently, with tall grasses waving like soft ocean water. Birds glided overhead, calling out to the wind. The sun warmed their backs and the horses' steps were steady and sure. They traveled in long, quiet stretches. Sometimes Nayeli would point out signs of the land, tracks of animals, the shape of distant hills, or the direction of water hidden beyond rocks. Elias admired how easily she understood the world around them. She saw meaning where others would see only dust and stone. At night they camped under the open sky. Elias would gather wood and build a small fire. Nayeli would prepare tea with herbs she carried. They sat close enough to feel warmth, yet still giving each other space. The night air carried soft music, the distant call of an owl, the whisper of the wind, the soft movement of sleeping earth. One night, as stars filled the sky in a blanket of silver specks, Nayeli spoke in a voice just above a whisper. "Thank you," she said. Elias looked over at her. "For what?" "For seeing me," she replied. "Not as something to be kept, but as someone who can choose." Elias felt the weight of her words, not heavy, but meaningful. He nodded slowly. "You are someone who carries strength," he said. "I only followed what was right." Nayeli looked up at the stars. The light reflected softly in her eyes. "Right is not always easy to follow," she said. There was silence after that, but it was full of understanding. The journey continued with the same gentle rhythm. They crossed open fields, small streams and quiet valleys. They shared quiet laughter sometimes. Nayeli teaching Elias words from her language, Elias trying to pronounce them, sometimes clumsily. Nayeli would smile, not mocking him, but sharing warmth. Along the way their trust grew, not suddenly, not loudly, but like a plant growing under steady sunlight. Slow, natural, real. They were moving toward her home, toward her people, toward the next chapter that awaited them. But they were also walking through something else, something soft, something steady. A bond, not one forced, not one expected. A bond born from respect, shared silence, and the gentle courage of two souls learning to understand each other. The journey was still long ahead, but they were not walking it alone, and that changed everything. The journey continued for many days. The sun rose and set across wide open skies, and each morning felt like a small step closer to something long awaited. Nayeli guided the path with quiet confidence. She knew the way not by roads but by the shapes of the hills, the bend of the rivers and the pattern of the stars at night. Elias trusted her sense of direction completely. He did not question how she knew so much. He simply learned by watching her. He realized that the land spoke to her the way books speak to some people. She understood its language without needing words. There were days when they rode in gentle silence, and there were days when they spoke softly about their worlds. Nayeli shared stories of morning dances and songs sung during planting season. Elias shared stories of ranch work, of caring for horses, and of how he had come to appreciate quiet moments more than anything else. Their conversations were never rushed. They let words come and go like small leaves carried lightly on a stream. They did not try to fill silence with sound. Their silence was comfortable, like the soft space between heartbeats. One evening, when the sun was just beginning to lower and the sky glowed with warm orange light, Nayeli pointed toward the horizon. Far, far in the distance, the faint shape of a mountain range rose like a sleeping giant. "My home is beyond those mountains," she said softly. Elias followed her gaze. His heart felt both light and thoughtful. They were close now. Close to her people, her family, her world. He wondered what would happen when they arrived. He wondered if this journey would end their time together, or if something of it would remain. He did not speak these thoughts aloud. Some feelings do not need to be spoken to be real. As they traveled nearer, the land began to change. The air felt cooler. Small streams ran beside them, reflecting the sky in soft ripples. Trees grew taller and greener. Signs of life appeared, footprints of deer, the cheerful chirping of birds, the distant movement of wild horses running as one group. Nayeli's expression grew thoughtful, touched with both joy and quiet reflection. Her back straightened a little more. Her steps became lighter. There was something in her eyes, a gentle brightness like the warmth of sunrise. After many days, one afternoon, they reached a grassy clearing. Nayeli paused, lifting her hand slightly, asking Elias to stop. He did. She listened. It was not a sound Elias could understand at first. A rhythmic pattern, soft, natural, almost like the sound of hands brushing against the earth. Her voice was filled with certainty when she spoke. "They are near." Elias felt a quiet breath move through him. Not worry, not fear, something like anticipation. They continued walking, but slower now, more mindful. Nayeli led, and Elias followed with calm trust. Then, through the tall grass and trees, figures appeared. A group of her people stood together, dressed in traditional clothing that carried patterns of their stories and history. They were strong and steady like the land itself. They did not run. They did not rush. They simply stood, watching. Nayeli stepped forward. Elias remained still behind her, showing respect by giving space. The group recognized her at once. A soft wave of emotion filled the air. Surprise, relief, joy that had been waiting for a long time. Faces softened. Eyes glowed with welcome, but they remained still, allowing Nayeli to choose how to close the distance. She walked forward slowly. And then something gentle happened. One woman stepped out from the group, her hair long and braided, her eyes warm and full of depth. Nayeli's breath caught softly and her voice broke like quiet rain. "Mother." The woman reached out and embraced Nayeli. The embrace was not rushed. It was full, grounding, like two pieces of something long separated, now whole again. No words were needed for a while. Their silence was full of love. When they separated, Nayeli's mother looked toward Elias. Her gaze was thoughtful, observant, calm. She saw a stranger but not danger. She saw a traveler but not threat. Nayeli turned slightly and spoke gently. "This is Elias. He helped me return. He treated me with respect." Her mother listened to her daughter's voice carefully. She nodded once, acknowledging what had been said. The group motioned for them to follow. Nayeli looked at Elias and he understood that this was an invitation, not a command. They walked together toward the village. The village was peaceful. Homes made of natural materials formed a circle around an open gathering space. Children played with bright laughter. Elders sat beneath shaded trees weaving baskets and telling stories. The place felt alive, not loud, but deeply warm. Every movement, every sound felt connected to the land. As they entered, more people came forward. Some recognized Nayeli immediately, their faces lit with joy. Some placed their hands over their hearts. Some touched her arm as she passed, showing welcome. Then, from the central gathering space, a tall figure stepped forward. His presence was strong but not intimidating. His hair was long and his posture carried both wisdom and calm power. His eyes were steady like a river that had seen many seasons. Nayeli stopped in front of him. Her voice was soft, filled with emotion she did not hide. "Father." A gentle silence fell, as though even the wind paused to listen. Her father took a slow breath. His eyes softened. He reached out and placed his hands on her shoulders. Their foreheads touched. It was a quiet greeting full of meaning, a greeting of heart to heart. When they stepped back, her father looked at Elias. Elias did not move or speak. He simply held himself with respect. He did not try to explain. He did not try to claim goodness. He believed actions spoke louder than words, and his actions were already done. Nayeli spoke for him, her voice steady and clear. He did not hold me.
He did not order me.
He walked with me. He helped me return home. He is a man of gentle heart. Her father listened. He studied Elias with eyes full of deep understanding. Finally, he nodded, a slow, meaningful nod. He stepped forward and placed his hand lightly over his chest, offering a gesture of respectful acknowledgement. Elias returned the gesture in the same calm way. There were no grand displays, no loud expressions, only truth, spoken without needing many words. Nayeli's father then guided his daughter back toward their home so she could rest. But before she went, Nayeli paused and turned to face Elias. Her eyes were warm, soft, full of meaning that did not need to be spoken. "You may stay," she said quietly. "If you wish." Elias looked around at the peaceful village. He saw people who welcomed without forcing. He saw land cared for with love. He saw a community built on trust and connection. He looked back at Nayeli. "I will stay," he replied. Her expression softened into something like quiet joy. They did not stand closer. They did not reach out to touch. They did not rush anything. Their hearts simply understood. The journey had brought them here, not to an ending, but to a beginning of understanding between two worlds, a place where trust could grow into something even deeper. In its own time, like seeds waiting for the gentle rain, life in the village slowly opened itself to Elias in quiet layers like petals of a flower unfolding one by one. He did not try to rush or take space that was not his. He walked gently among the people, listened before speaking, and learned with humble interest. This earned him the respect of the community, not through anything dramatic, but through steady patience. Nayeli returned to her daily life with her people. Yet every day, at some moment, her eyes would find Elias across the village, and they would share a quiet look filled with understanding. They did not need many words. Their bond was something that had grown slowly over time and still continued to grow, like roots beneath the earth, hidden but strong. Elias helped where help was needed. He repaired fences the same way he did at his ranch. He learned how to shape clay pots by watching the elders and taking his time. The children of the village grew comfortable with him first. They followed him, curious about his horses. Elias would show them how to brush a horse gently, how to let the animal trust them before touching. Their laughter was soft and bright, like warm sunlight on cool water. Nayeli's mother often watched this from a distance. She saw a man who did not try to impress, who did not try to change their way of life, who simply lived beside them with respect. She began offering him tea in the early evenings. They sat in comfortable silence, as though both understood that some bonds are formed not through words, but through calm presence. Nayeli's father watched too, not with suspicion but with thoughtful awareness. He saw Elias's quiet character. He saw how Elias's eyes softened when looking at Nayeli, not with possession but with admiration. He saw that Elias was built not from pride but from kindness. One evening, as the sky glowed with soft purple light and the smell of cooking fires drifted through the air, the chief approached Elias. They stood near the edge of the village, where tall grass swayed gently in the cooling breeze. Elias waited, not speaking first. "You walk with care among my people," the chief said. His voice was steady like deep earth. "You do not push. You do not take. You move like someone who understands that every place has its own heart." Elias nodded quietly. "Your home is peaceful." "It is an honor to be here." The chief studied him carefully. Then he spoke again, his tone thoughtful and calm. "My daughter has strength. She has wisdom. Her spirit is steady like the river that does not rush. She has returned to us with peace in her heart, not pain. That is something I see clearly. That peace came because you walked beside her." Elias lowered his eyes slightly, not out of guilt or fear, but out of respect. "I only did what felt right," he said gently. "Doing what is right," the chief replied, "is not always simple. Many know what is right but choose what is easy instead." There was a soft silence between them, filled with the sound of distant evening songs. Finally, the chief spoke again. "You are welcome to stay among us, for as long as your heart feels at home here." Elias lifted his gaze. His eyes showed quiet gratitude. "Thank you," they said no more. The words that needed saying had been said. That night the village came together around a fire. Songs were sung. Elders told stories passed down through many generations. Children sat at the feet of their grandparents, eyes wide with wonder. The flames flickered softly, painting warm colors on faces and sending sparks into the starlit sky. Nayeli sat among her family, but occasionally her gaze drifted to Elias, who sat on the opposite side of the circle. He watched the stories, listened to the songs, and smiled quietly at moments of joy. When their eyes met, there was no rush, no urgency, only understanding. Later, when most people had returned to their homes, only a few remained by the soft glow of the glowing embers. Nayeli walked toward Elias, her steps slow and steady. Elias stood as she approached, not out of formality, but out of quiet respect. They walked a short distance away, to the edge of the field where the sky opened wide and stars shone like scattered feathers of light. The night was cool and the grass beneath their feet whispered softly. Nayeli looked up at the stars. Her voice was gentle. "They told me you may stay, that you are welcome here," Elias nodded. "Your father spoke to me. He offered me a place here." She turned to look at him. Her eyes reflected the starlight, soft, deep, full of quiet emotion. "What do you wish?" she asked. It was a simple question, but it carried meaning larger than the horizon. Elias took a slow breath. He looked out at the land, the mountains standing watch in the distance, the quiet village resting peacefully, the sky stretching endless and open. Then he looked back at Nayeli. "I wish for peace," he said softly, "and I have found peace here. I do not feel like a stranger. I feel connected." Nayeli listened with her whole being. Her expression did not change quickly. She let his words settle into the air, the way seeds settle into soil. She spoke after a moment, her voice soft as drifting leaves. "I am glad you stayed. When we walked together, I did not know what waited for us, but I was not afraid because you walked with a gentle heart." Their eyes held each other, steady and calm. Elias stepped closer. Not too close, just enough to show that his heart was open. Nayeli did not step back. She remained steady, like the earth beneath them. "I do not wish to take your world from you," Elias said quietly. "I only wish to be part of it if there is place for me." Nayeli's voice was warm when she answered, "There is place. Not because you ask for it, but because you carry respect, and respect is the root of belonging." The night wrapped around them like a gentle blanket. The stars shimmered. The earth was quiet and watching. They did not touch hands. They did not rush forward. They simply stood side by side, two souls who had walked through distance, silence, and journeyed to find a place where their paths continued, not as separate travelers, but as companions. Days became weeks and weeks became seasons. Elias grew into the rhythm of village life. He learned the songs sung at the first light of day. He learned how to read the meaning in the clouds. He learned that community was less about words and more about shared hearts. Nayeli continued to grow into her role among her people, strong, thoughtful, respected. She began to guide others with gentle leadership. Her voice carried calm certainty, and her presence felt like warm earth after rain. Elias supported her not as someone standing in front or behind, but beside her. He did not try to lead where he did not understand. He listened, learned, and shared what he could with kindness. Over time, their bond deepened, not through dramatic moments but through quiet consistency. Through shared morning walks, through preparing meals together, through sitting by the river in the evenings and watching the water move with slow grace. They became two hearts woven together by respect, patience, and gentle trust. Their story was told across the region, not as a tale of rescue or ownership, but as a story of two people who chose to see each other with dignity, a story of how understanding can bridge worlds that seem far apart. It became a story not of capturing or saving, but of sharing life, and it was known by many simply as The Cowboy and the Chief's Daughter, the story of trust, a story of peace, a story of choice, a story of two souls who walked side by side under the wide open sky.